Okay, guys, it's just past 2 o'clock. So we'll get a start. I'll pass over to the Chief Executive to take us through attendance and apologies.
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon, members. To all members of Derry City and Strabane District Council, you are summoned to attend the reconvened meeting of Derry City and Strabane District Council, which will be a hybrid meeting conducted remotely via WebEx and physically in the Council Chamber in the Guildhall today, Thursday, 26th of January at 2 o'clock. Alderman Breslin. Alderman Devaney.
Here, John.
Alderman Guy. Alderman Hussey. Alderman Carrigan. Alderman McCready. Alderman McMorris.
Here, John.
Alderman Thompson.
Apology, John.
Alderman Wark. Councillor Jason Barr.
Here online, John.
Councillor Raymond Barr.
Here, John.
Councillor John Boyle.
Here.
Councillor Michaela Boyle.
And Shaw, John, online.
Councillor Carr. Councillor Cusick.
Here.
Councillor Dobbins. Councillor Donnelly.
And Shaw.
Councillor Doyle.
Online, John.
Councillor Alex Duffy.
Apologies.
Councillor Sandra Duffy.
And Shaw.
Councillor Edwards. Councillor Farrell.
Here.
Councillor Ferguson.
Apologies.
Councillor Gallagher.
And Shaw.
Councillor Harkin. Councillor Heaney.
Shaw.
Councillor Jackson.
Shaw.
Councillor Kelly.
Shaw.
Councillor Logue.
And Shaw, online.
Councillor McGinley.
And Shaw.
Councillor McGowan.
He's online.
Online, John.
Councillor Maguire. Councillor McHugh. Councillor McKinney.
Here, John.
Councillor Mooney. Councillor Norris.
Online.
Online, John.
Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Riley. Councillor Sinoy Barr.
Apologies, and I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you, members. Back to you, Mayor.
Okay, just to read the broadcasting statement, I would like to remind everyone present at this meeting in the chamber in attendance remotely. That's the wrong one. That's for hybrids. Sorry. Apologies. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. This webcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. If you're seated in the lower public seating media areas, it's possible that the recording cameras will capture your image, and this will result in the possibility of your image becoming part of the broadcast. This may infringe your human and data protection rights, and if you wish to avoid this, you should move to the upper gallery. I believe that's the wrong one as well. But just get the gist. Okay, the right one seems to have gone. Okay, thank you everyone for attending again today to the reconvened meeting. I would like to start by thanking the Deputy Mayor for taking the meeting yesterday. I believe it was lively, but she handled it well. So thank you to the Deputy Mayor for taking control of the meeting yesterday and carrying out other duties that I wasn't able to do. Just to update people, I was in London yesterday meeting with a number of the chiefs from BBC. We had a meeting which was attended also by the MP Colin Eastwood and the MP Gregory Campbell. We had open and frank discussions with the BBC bosses in terms of Radio 4 and the proposed cuts. They said they were listening, but they were steadfast in their belief in their plan for the way forward. They have said that they have listened to us. I said I hope that they have heard us. I presented as well some of the information that had been circulated in terms of the Save Radio 4 campaign, so that they had that there. They have also highlighted the fact that they have been inundated with emails and letters of support support for radio foil and in opposition to the cuts. So I would advise people to continue with that, let the voices be heard and sign the online petition. I also extended the invitation for them to come to Derry again. They said that they would. I will wait and see if they do, but I will keep on top of them. So just that's an update by way of yesterday. Also in terms of Men's Action Network, I know there was a motion here yesterday in relation to their funding. I met with Men's Action Network this morning along with council officers. Hopefully they're not a resolution, but at least some green shoots. So some good news at least. Okay, then into the business of the meeting. We are into motions, so let's see where we are. Councillor Logues was the last yesterday, so Councillor O'Neill.
Thanks. Can I get a seconder?
I'll second it.
Thanks. Councillor McKinney. So yeah, if we just take the motion as read, I'm sure some of you have seen that over the last number of weeks, there's been an increased prevalence of attacks aimed at refugees and asylum seekers in temporary accommodation in working class communities in Dublin and Drogheda and Limerick. And these attacks are completely unacceptable. They've been orchestrated by the far right, who over the last year have been trying to stir up hatred and racism in working class communities. And, these working class communities, of course, have a right to be angry at the moment as people are at breaking point with the deepening of the cost of living crisis. But it's important that this anger is directed at the right place and not manipulated. And in that place in the south is at Fine and Fianna Fáil and their rich pals who are responsible for crisis after crisis. And it's important that, we point that out and stick together and reject, those forces that are trying to divide us. We've seen with these attacks at the far right, with the increased prevalence of them, they're trying to normalise attacks on migrants, and they're trying to normalise attacks on LGBTQ plus people, on women's rights campaigners and other minority groups. Ourselves in the South, People Before Profit Party colleagues have been threatened and attacked in their own homes as well as other anti-racist representatives. And, we've seen minority communities being scapegoated, and there's been a real spreading of fear and hate for the far right's own means. I say the far right, but these organisations are identifiable. It's like there's a dairyman right in the centre of this, and they have links with Nigel Farage and with far right groups in Europe. And, this is really to be taken seriously. These people are cowards attacking minority communities, and we haven't seen them do anything for working class communities for decades, and now they're rising up as things get a whole lot worse. And they're only speaking out when they can do down a minority community. And I think it's just a good warning sign here, because what's happening in the south is no different to what's happening up here in the north, or what could happen up here. Like, we have the same crisis that's facing working class communities here, and there's individuals and organisations that will do what they can to deflect their own failures in causing these crises by scapegoating minority communities here. And no one should pander to the far right poison, and we must do all we can as a council to say loud and clearly that there's no room for division here, and history tells its own story, and we'd be fools not to take heed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. Councillor McKinney.
I'd like to thank Councillor for bringing this motion. As Councillor pointed out there, it's not just in the Republic of Ireland, it's also within our own district. We've had hate crimes, and also around Belfast is quite prevalent, and around Newton Abbey and parts of Belfast, working class Belfast. Unfortunately, it's the way that migrants are tarred, that they're taking work away from local people, etc., which creates hatred, and we needed dispel that. And in fact, this council itself held a training session there approximately 2 weeks ago, which Councillor Logan and myself attended, which was very, very interesting and very educational on asylum seekers and refugees. And it was a bit pity there was only 2 of us at it. I think it would have been a lot more benefit to councillors if they had it attended. So we fully support this motion. and hope that nobody objects to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKinney. Councillor McGowan online, and Councillor McHugh has asked if he's marked present.
Thank you. We fully support this motion as well. There has been a huge increase in the amount of attacks on our migrant community right across this island. I would prefer to use the words of Imelda May, who wrote a poem about this. You don't get to be racist in Irish. You don't get to be proud of your heritage, plights and flight and fights for freedom. And I think the important lines in that poem: we emigrated, and we took refuge, so we cannot refuse when it's our time. So as a party, we fully support the motion, and thanks for bringing it forward.
Thank you, Councillor McGowan, and glad to hear you've got your voice back. Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, thank you, Mayor, and thanks to Councillor O'Neill for bringing forward the motion. I think we've all seen over recent times in media and in social media the attacks that have been happening in Dublin and Drogheda and other parts of the south. I suppose in the back of my mind and my ignorance knew that it was always going on, but when you see some of the scenes outside hotels, I was appalled to see how many people were actually there in opposition to migrants being welcomed and looked after in our country. As Councillor O'Neill has said, and the Irish people have travelled the world for generations, and I think it needs to be said, weren't always treated nicely in certain places that they may have landed, and for people who were here, spoke out against that and stood up against it and encouraged those people that had travelled away to set up a new life and seek opportunity, that we had their back and that we were here and we understood what they were going through. To see that now flipped on its head, and people in our country treating migrants the way they are is totally appalling. Hate crime and racial attacks anywhere is something that should be called out, and I hope that this motion passes with a unanimous support in this council, because I think it sends a message out that we understand and we welcome migrants to our council area and to our country. Our party has worked, and it's outlined in the motion, that this council commits to stamping out any far-right racist poison that could divide communities. We've worked through generations of our party to try and stamp out anything which divides our communities, and we will continue to do that, and we're very proud of the record and the history that we have around that, and we will continue to do it, and we will be only too glad to lend our support to this motion and send a message to migrants everywhere that this council and Derry City and Strabane District Council support them, welcome them and stand up for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me in. And look, our party have no problem in supporting this notice of motion coming forward here. I think hate crimes or sectarian crime or whatever it might be, we are totally opposed of it, and it is wrong for anybody. Is somebody speaking, Mayor?
Only you.
Apologies, I left my mic on.
No.
Apologies.
Sorry, Brian. I thought you were going to give me a telling off, but look, Mayor, just as I said, we have no problem in supporting the motion, and we all know of the issues across Northern Ireland, and we're reading here today, and we all hear about issues across the Republic of Ireland, and it is wrong that people are treated in this manner. And I often say, Mayor, I know there's a lot of platforms out there, media platforms, social media and stuff like that there, and some of the vile hatred that goes on that there. And I believe more needs to be done on that social media platform, because, you have so many people on there with anonymous accounts. And, if police investigate, they're accountable to nobody, because it's a difficult track to find out who anonymous people are. And around that, we talk about people leaving the Emerald Isles, or whatever you want to call it, many years ago. Great aunts who left Donegal just after and around the end of the famine, and Mayor got on a boat. I don't know how we can't understand how we got from here to London, but they got on a boat in London, and it was a 3-month hell trip from there to America. And you know, as we do say, we have a lot of our population, even across Northern Ireland, living in America now, and further afield. And I think it's nice to, when you come into a foreign country, that you do feel welcome. But happy to support the notice of motion, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Devaney. Councillor Donnelly.
Chair. Look, Chair, a lot of what was to say has already been covered, and you know, there's an Irish diaspora right throughout the world, and you know, we of all people should realise the importance of safe sanctuary and better conditions. You know, racism, homophobia, sexism, sectarianism, whatever, you know, it's built on hate, and it's not healthy, and it goes way far beyond that. These people are now actually, you know, they're that confident that there's gangs of them, and there are hundreds massed up outside people's offices, issuing threats on a daily basis. It wasn't that long ago, Chair, that we had the no dogs, no blacks, and no Irish. And one of the previous speakers, Maeve, has said there's a dairyman right in the middle of this. You know, it wasn't that long ago in Omagh when, you know, the Pride March, we had a Donegal man who was spewing hatred under the banner of religion. And unfortunately, people like McConnell and Kelly, they're scoundrels, and they're using patriotism and religion, and as the old saying goes, it's the last refuge of the scoundrels. Condemnation isn't enough. Mayor, this needs to be opposed vigorously, and we need to be calling it out on all levels or wherever we see it happening. And I'm happy to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly. Couldn't agree with all speakers more. I don't have any further indicated speakers, so I'm going to go back to Councillor O'Neill to sum up.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to everybody for their words of support for this motion. I think it's really important that we're all united as a council in rejecting this poison that's starting to brew on this island. And you know, the key message in this is that, you know, the many crises that we're facing around wages, around housing, you know, in the healthcare service, migrants have not caused any of these crises. And the far right are trying to deflect away from the failures of government in directing that hate and anger and division towards minority communities. And as well as migrants, targeting migrants, they are also targeting socialists, they're targeting outspoken women, they're targeting LGBTQ plus people, but particularly trans people are getting a lot of attacks at the moment as well. And, you know, we have to remember many of the migrants and asylum seekers that are, you know, coming here are seeking asylum because of wars that Western powers have had their hand on. And, you know, we see hate crimes on the rise here in the north as well, but many of these go deeply unrecorded. And, you know, I think it's important and it's good that we're, you know, setting that message loud and clear that we want to stamp out this toxic poison and where there's no room for hate and division in this society. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. Absolutely nobody speaking in opposition. So just thank you for bringing forward the motion. We'll record that as unanimous. So thank you. Moving on to the next motion, which is Councillor McGowan.
Thank you for letting me on. Can I just say
So just I see Councillor Jackson has seconded the motion. So go ahead now.
Okay. Can I just say that I think all of us, when we last, I think it was actually 2 weeks ago when the report came out about Invest NI, were quite surprised, not by the content of the report, but by the shenanigans going on at strategic level. I'll take the motion as read, and I know the subject has come up many times at council. I do feel, however, this recent report gives us now the chance to hold their feet to the fire, for use of a phrase. It's clear from the report that the Northwest has been ignored as an organisation, and this is not me saying this, this is what the report is saying. When you look at the head count, They have 647 staff. 536 of these are in Belfast, and 50 are spread across 5 regional offices, with Derry being one of them. Invest NI has failed. It has failed not only the Northwest, but the whole of the North. There's been a lack of regional economic development, and have failed year by year spectacularly to develop any sort of regional economic growth. It's also clear from talking to companies that during the pandemic that they've been done to what people call hibernation, and many businesses felt let down. And if it wasn't for funding from the Department of Finance, many companies would have went to the wall. So the motion is calling on council to express concern at the recent report. So I would like, they also mentioned at the Business and Culture Committee, we've already requested for the full board of Invest NI to come to Derry and speak to us. I'm quite happy to bring that to full council. I think that was what was agreed or discussed by members that night. I do, however, feel that a letter coming from all council members to Invest NI, demonstrating to them that the fundamental reform is required, would carry much more weight. And I'll leave you just with one other. There's more people employed in Letterkenny in economic development when you add up what's in IDA and Enterprise Ireland than there is in this city. And this city is the 4th biggest city in Ireland. So hopefully members will recognise the need to challenge the Invest NI board and their acting CEO, and to ensure that all areas outlined in the report are implemented, and that they give us a time scale of when that will happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGowan. I don't see anybody indicating to speak. Councillor Harkin, glad we have a taker.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor McGowan. And I think that most of the parties here have made their views known on the recent independent review of Invest NI. And we certainly welcomed the criticisms within it, but we also felt it could go much further, because the rot in Invest NI goes a lot deeper than the debates that they're having on their board. And we would welcome Invest NI having more of a focus, particularly on regional inequalities, especially here in Derry and in the Northwest. I'm not sure that this organisation is fit for purpose. I think from top to bottom, it has never functioned properly, especially if you're from this part of the world. So that's why we think it should be abolished and replaced with something else that has a different viewpoint. And I think that the fundamental problem with Invest NI is the foundation that it's built on, which is a neoliberal economic model that sees putting corporations first, privatisation, working with corrupt international regimes as the way to do economic development. And that's why it has failed. And it's why it has failed to address the real issues that exist here as a result of partition, as a result of the way that Stormont has functioned for decades. So we are not going to oppose the proposal, but we think that the problems with Invest NI make fundamental reform problematic. There needs to be a different kind of economic development organisation that has at its heart addressing regional inequality, and also that looks at our public services as part of the solution and not part of the problem. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. Councillor Doyle.
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate your comments at the beginning of the meeting as well about the Men's Action Network. I'm sure all the staff, and I certainly do appreciate that. I appreciate John bringing this motion, because I think it's important that we keep on at this. But for Aintu and for myself, the aspect that this comes from is, is from the very top. Invest NI is rotten to the core, in terms of their complete and utter strategic lack of direction for sub-regional growth, which is something that's been talked about in this city for decades. But ultimately, there hasn't been an independent review of economic policy from the executive since 2009, a lifetime ago at this stage. And ultimately, the buck stops with the Department for the Economy. And when we as a council, and I'm not making a political point about this, I don't care who's in the ministry, but when we've sent letters to, that minister or that department over many, many, many times around a range of economic issues, they're largely ignored. So we have to hold the people responsible for this within the Department for the Economy, because ultimately they are the ones who appoint members to the board of Invest NI. They are the ones who oversee its direction. And until such times as we can do that, and until such times as there's a fundamental review of economic policy and not just about Invest NI, I think we're probably going to continue to do what we've been doing for a long time, which is trying to get them effectively to do their jobs. Because ultimately, I mean, we even see it here. We've had to duplicate services in this council in order to step up to address the mess that Invest NI leaves us with when they don't put on an effort to try and bring jobs to the city and district. So fully supportive of the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doran. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Mayor, and apologies for late arrival, and indeed to Councillor O'Neill missing her motion. Thank Councillor McGowan for the motion that's in front of us. It's an extremely timely motion, and in fact, when I say it's timely, I would suspect it's one that's been simmering for a long, long time, and that goes back to my time in Strabane District Council when the concerns were being expressed there as to the actual commitment of Invest NI to the Strabane area, and in this case, as we move forward to the entire northwest area. I take on board what Councillor Harkin has said there about, a complete throwout of the organisation and a new organisation, but at the same time, we all know that there are some good people in there in Invest NI who do understand our needs within this area. So the call for a fundamental reform is one that to me is quite logical and that the Ulster Unionist Party can very much support. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. Councillor Farrell.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Councillor McGowan, for proposing the motion. I wanted to speak after the DUP so I could have a go at them, but I'm just going to say the same thing anyway, because I've got it prepared. We've had this discussion time and time again, and we had it at Business and Culture 2 weeks ago, and it's good that we are inviting the board of Invest NI, and we're inviting the permanent secretary of the economy department to listen to our concerns. The SDLP's position on this is well known and it's well documented, and we don't need a 371-page report to tell us that Invest NI is failing miserably for Derry and Strabane. You just need to have a quick look at the job creation figures for last year. In Belfast, Invest NI supported the creation of 1,657 jobs. Meanwhile, here in the northwest, in Derry and Strabane, the figure was 67, and the status quo is not fair. It's not balanced. It's not even in the vicinity of being fair or balanced. And the figures are stark. The figures are startling. They're difficult to read. But what's more difficult is listening to the DUP commentary on this. And I know Morris is going to say that he agrees, but the fundamental fact is that his party doesn't. The decision makers in the leadership of the DUP have a very, very different perspective from Alderman Devaney, and there are a few inescapable truths. The DUP have controlled Invest NI for the last 17 years. And the DUP, their position is that like a rogue or renegade nationalist minister won't be allowed near that department. We have invited 3 separate economy ministers to come to this chamber to listen to our concerns about the performance of Invest NI in the Northwest. Diane Dodds refused. Paul Frew refused, Gordon Lyons refused. None of them have come here to listen to us, and it's absolutely shameful. And we have to remember that we have an ex-chief executive of Invest NI who was actually a DUP special advisor in the past. So the DUP's hands are all over this. Some would say they're complicit. I would say they're completely to blame for this mess. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. And now, Alderman Devaney.
I'm just laughing, Mayor. I'm just laughing. Mayor, thank you for allowing me in. And look, probably the previous speaker has probably rehearsed what I was going to say, but he has said it on behalf of the DUP, so he has. Morris is near my side. Look, Mayor, I have been on record many, many times and around the disparity in the Northwest from Invest NI. And look, all of this has been rehashed at a previous meeting. The same issues were raised. But I do believe, look, it is timely now that we get the board of Invest NI down to have the discussions. Let's have the discussions and really drill them into the lack of investment in the Northwest. And, Mayor, now is timely for this to happen, is because as we look forward to City Deal, and look, we need investment from a lot of stakeholders, but at the end of the day, I have supported calls for Invest NI to invest more in the Northwest, and I'm on record on the council here. But look, happy to support the motion because it has been rehashed at a previous meeting. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Devaney, and I don't have any further speakers. So before going back to Councillor McGowan, I just want to say that Minister Lyons, when he was in post, did meet with myself over Zoom, and at that meeting he was challenged around Invest NI, and at that meeting he defended Invest NI and their position and didn't believe that the Northwest or Derry needed or deserved any sort of special sub-regional status or interventions. So good to hear where the DUP are on it today. So back to yourself, Councillor McGowan.
Thank you. Some very useful comments here made by people, but I do think timing's now of the essence. We have to shape this fundamental review and put an emphasis on more sub-regional growth. So that's why I feel it is timely. The report very clearly points to the golden circle. A number of companies who received up to 2/3 of that $500 million over the last 3 years. So we need to look more at small business, and we also need to be saying very clearly to Invest NI that local councils are the best place for this local development, and that means a long hard look at the budget that they give to council and really impressing them the need to give more on that. So I'm delighted that members have supported it. I believe that we have an opportunity, and if we could write them and get them here to the city, the report very clearly shows us now what they need to do and to ensure that they do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor McGowan. And I just want to check, Sean, are you voting for or abstaining? I wasn't clear. You said you weren't voting against, so just want to check. Excellent. Okay, then on that basis, I'm going to say that it's unanimous. Okay, thank you. Moving on now to Councillor Harkin's motion. And can we get a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Neil.
Can I take the motion as read then? Okay, great. Thank you, Mayor. Look, I was on picket lines today, as I'm sure others were, with striking health and social care workers. I'll be on the picket line tomorrow again at 10 o'clock with the housing executive maintenance workers, and I welcome others to join me there at 10 o'clock tomorrow to make sure that this isn't a forgotten strike. Teachers have announced that they're going out and strike on February 21st. Lecturers at McGee and at Ulster University and Queen's have announced 18 days of strikes. Firefighters are balloting this week to, I think, announce strike dates. And Royal Mail workers will be going out again because their dispute hasn't been resolved. And there's more and more workers have decided that taking strike action is the only way that their voice can be heard. And that's very unfortunate. Obviously, the cost of living crisis is the spark for this, but this is really the product of 15 to 20 years of pay cuts, pay freezes, privatisation, and the running down of terms and conditions for workers right across our society. And shamelessly, the Tories are attempting to scapegoat workers and blame workers for all these problems. And that is the goal of their new legislation that they've introduced in Westminster, which is to try and limit the right to strike, which is a democratic right, and cause further division. It's shameless from the Tories, but not surprising, because this has been their response to workers since the party was founded. Shamelessly too was the decision by the DUP MP Sammy Wilson to vote with the Tories in Westminster. It's not only a betrayal of workers here, it's a betrayal of workers right across these islands for Sammy Wilson to vote to back up this draconian legislation. And I think that the response of the DUP has been, again, a disgrace. Instead of condemning Wilson's vote, they've tried to fudge and say that the Tories have said that this draconian legislation can be amended. But look, the DUP have been at the forefront of keeping Thatcher-era trade union laws on the books here at Stormont, along with the rest of the executive. And when we had the opportunity to repeal that legislation back in this year, the DUP unfortunately voted to keep it in place. So this is backing up the Tories and their attack on workers and their attack on trade unions is part and parcel of what the DUP do. So I think that this message from our council is important, that we oppose anti-trade union laws. We oppose limits on the right to strike. We're standing in solidarity with all those workers who are deciding to take strike action. And that we will, we want to see government reprioritise so that workers are paid properly and our public services are properly funded. And that trade union action has always been a key way of standing up for the vast majority of people across our society. So I hope people will support it on that basis. I think Mick Lynch, the leader of the RMT, the Rail, Maritime and Transport Union, has been one of the best advocates for trade unionism in recent years. Much better, I think, than Keir Starmer, the leader of the official opposition. I think many people here and across the water see Mick Lynch as someone who has been leading the resistance, talking about uniting working class communities and drawing a line and saying enough is enough. I think it would be fantastic if we were able to hear directly from Mick Lynch here in the Guildhall. I think his message is one now that is bringing people together and putting it up to the Tories and saying, look, it's not just about pay cuts right now, it's about the future of our society, it's about what it's going to look like, and how do we begin the process of clawing back control over society away from a tiny elite that have put the interests of corporations and billionaires ahead of everyone else. So I hope that Council backs this motion today.
Afternoon. Thank you, Councillor Harkin. Councillor McKinney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for letting us in. We'll fully support this motion, and I'd just like to say that we need this bill stopped. The government wished to take away many of the rights that trade unions in the UK and Europe worked hard to obtain. And I mean not just workers' rights, but also they're trying to take away, change the health and safety regulations that were brought in by the European Union. They're trying to change the human rights issues. And I would just remind you as well that under the protocol, at the minute, we're the only part of the United Kingdom that is protected by the European Human Rights Council. And if we lose, if the DUP have their way, we'll lose those rights as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKinney. Councillor Jackson?
Carmel Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Harkin for bringing the motion to Council. And on behalf of Sinn Féin, I'll say that we fully support the motion that's in front of us. We're totally opposed to the attacks from the British Tory Party on workers' rights. The British Tory Party, which Councillor Harkin has outlined, are supported by the DUP, and we're all only too familiar with the campaigns right across, particularly in our public sector, of workers demanding better, workers taking their democratic right to withdraw their labour in order to have their voice heard. And the message that we've heard from the Tory party, supported by the DUP, is that they're not listening, that their response to this is to introduce legislation to block workers from their right to withdraw their labour. That's not, it's disgusting, but it's not surprising. We've continuously seen this government, the government in Westminster, put the greed of the elites in front of the needs of ordinary people and workers. And I think Councillor McKinney outlined some of the rights and protections that have been lost in a post-Brexit society, and there is a post-Brexit ideological drive against a rights-based society. There has been protections that we've lost or we're losing on the back of Brexit, but that's and when you see the attempt and the direction of travel from the Tories, I think it makes it all that more important that progressive parties here in the North stand up to the DUP, work together. It was great to hear the Alliance Party recognise the importance of trade unions, because I know when the trade union bill came into the Assembly, there was opposition to that. I think for this Tory policy to be introduced in Ireland, it will need the backing of parties here, and I hope that all parties stand against the DUP, work together and oppose any attack on workers' rights here in the North.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Mooney?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Councillor Harkin for bringing the motion, and the SDLP fully support it. I also endorse the views of Councillor McKinney and Councillor Jackson. Like they've said what I basically going to say, but looking here at the explanatory notes, just looking at it at the moment now, as Councillor Jackson said, we will have to stand up to the DUP if they intend to bring this policy into this jurisdiction, if there's ever an Assembly and Executive formed. At the moment, this is only applying to England, Wales and Scotland, but obviously this is only one way to describe this legislation. It's morally repugnant that this legislation seeks to amend previous Tory party strike legislation, and it's a further erosion of the worker strikes. I had the opportunity today of going to the picket line in Alton, and actually it's a timely motion because I had a conversation with some of the strikers there and discussing the actual implications of what this motion would bring for their actual colleagues in England, Wales or Scotland who are on the picket lines today. And when you actually try to explain to them, it's sunk in that what they're doing today, that if they did this in England, Scotland and Wales, the day after this will become, if ever it becomes an act, they could potentially lose their jobs, and trade unions could actually be opened up to civil actions from their employers. And the more And the more you look at it, the more draconian it looks, because it doesn't even give Parliament effective right of scrutiny. It delegates powers to ministers to make these powers without any effective parliamentary scrutiny. So what we have is a further erosion of attacks on workers' rights, especially given when you look back and you just realise that what these workers have done, because what we're talking about is essentially the vast majority of this applies to these public sector workers, transport workers, health workers, rail workers, people who provide consistent daily services. And what they're saying was, what these people did in COVID, forget about it, it's done. The cost of living crisis, it's done. All the efforts that you've done, all the painstaking work that you put in over the last 2 or 3 years, forget about it, we're moving on. And this is what they're repaid with this morally bankrupt piece of legislation. And all I can say is that I hope that people see some sense, and also the fact is that if ever approaches this island, that hopefully it gets struck down firmly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mooney. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank Councillor Harkin for the motion, or should I say motions, because if you read this, there are actually 4 motions contained within it. There's the issue of the NHS, there's the issue of civil servants, there's the issue of teachers, and then there's the final one inviting Mr. Lynch to make a presentation in the Guildhall. And in his summing up, perhaps Councillor Harkin can clarify, is that a presentation in the Guildhall or a presentation to Council? There's a difference there. He may be calling for a public meeting to be facilitated in the Guildhall, to which Mr. Lynch might be invited. So just clarification on that. I want to propose an amendment to the current motion and bring on board another group of civil servants, another group of public servants, public and civil servants, and a group who do not have the right to strike. Members will have heard today of planned cuts within police service, both to officers and to civilian staff. And I ask that the proposal be placed, it is placed now, where I'm asking that we invite Mr. Kelly from the Police Federation to address Council and inform us of the societal impact that such cuts will have going forward. I'm seeking a seconder.
Okay, to valid amendment. Councillor McKenna, you seconding? Yeah, okay, thank you.
If I may then just quickly address the amendment. We're looking at the health service, we're looking at civil servants, we're looking at teachers, and what's happening here is also pushing our police service down the same road as all of these other groups into becoming an exclusively reactive body and not a preventative one, which is really wanted. It has long-term negative implications, and I'm asking via the amendment that Mr. Kelly from the Police Federation would be invited to Council to give us the view of officers on the ground, their view on the societal impact. And I'm also mindful, and I have a declared interest in this, I'm not going to highlight that particular personal interest, but we have to also consider the cuts that are proposed to civilian support staff. The numbers at the moment, as far as I understand, are 390 officers and 150 civilian support staff, which will have a tremendous impact on policing and on society. I don't think it's proposed to actually sack anyone. It's natural redundancy. But the areas that have been identified already as being impacted are counter-terrorism and road traffic policing, 2 very important areas. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. Alderman McMorris, just checking if you're happy to speak to the amendment.
I'll just speak to the original motion.
Okay, so you want to come back?
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
we're big.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Councillor Harkin on the amendment.
First of all, Mayor, I want to challenge the validity of the amendment because police officers are not talking about taking strike action. This is a proposal that goes in a different direction because it's a discussion about the role of police in society and the role of policing. I mean, if the motion, if the amendment was accepted, I would oppose it for discussion on the basis that, like, if these draconian laws are actually introduced, it's the police that will come along and potentially arrest striking workers. That's what we've seen the police doing over the last year and a half, whether it's been Foyle Port, whether it's been other groups of workers taking strike action. It's the police aren't coming there in solidarity. They're coming there implementing and carrying out the legislation that's on the books that is designed to keep trade unions down. So I think for a number of reasons, I think the validity, first of all, like this doesn't actually fit as part of the motion. It's I think Councillor Alderman Hussey should bring this motion separately if he wants to have a discussion about the role of the police in society. And I think that putting the police and the emotion about anti-trade union laws doesn't make any sense.
I'm just going to seek legal advice.
Councillor Harkin forgets the police are not allowed to strike.
All right, we're going to seek legal advice.
Mayor, happy to bring Philip in, but just quick discussion on it there and looking through it. The original notice of motion does start quite narrowly in relation to proposals to limit the right to strike and the minimum services levels bill, but does get broader, includes a wide range of other public servants. And I think while the comments of Councillor Harkin, it doesn't fit neatly, are probably apt, we would consider that the amendment still is valid and that it broadly is in line with the broader elements of the original notice of motion.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Philip, are you okay? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Alderman Devaney on the amendment.
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me in.
Just can I come as a point of order, Chair?
Somebody speaking there? I think it's
Just a
Bella.
second. What's your point of order, Councillor Gallagher?
I just put on the chat box there a point of order. Just to see the amendment. Does the amendment put a greater emphasis on council than the original motion?
No, I think it would be stretching it to say that it places an additional burden on the council, which is what the standing order requires.
Thank you. Back to yourself, Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me back in again. Look, our party has no problem in supporting the amendment here, and I think we should be very clear we support all workers. And, it's interesting now that we have people before profit only support some workers, not all workers. And I have heard nothing but support workers and strikes from people before profit. But unfortunately now that the PSNI has been mentioned here, I see that support winning there. But we're happy to support the amendment, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Devaney. Councillor McKinney.
Thank you again, Mayor, for letting me in. On the amendment, I think we need to realise that the actual Police Federation is the trade union of the police force. So if we're going to recognise other trade unions, I think we need to recognise that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson.
Good Mayor, and on behalf of Sinn Féin, say that we would support the amendment. It would be interesting to have a representative of the Police Federation in this chamber, given the stance that they've taken in opposing legacy. Legacy challenges taken by victims of state violence from this part of the world, but there's there's a complete silence. So from them in terms of any questions it's posed, so it would be good to have them in here to answer some questions that we would have. But in relation to impacts of potential cuts right across our public sector, any potential cuts to the police service that may result in, as Councillor or Alderman Hussey has outlined, particularly around the road traffic division, where there could lead to public safety concerns on our roads, is alarming. So if there's a public element to this, and the service could be removed from or reduced in any way, I think it's important that we hear, because this is another element of Tory cuts, and I've said on the outset that we as a party oppose Tory cuts in its entirety, and if there's anything that we can do to minimise the impact that it's having on our society, we will explore every avenue that's available to us. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Mooney.
Thank you, Chair. And just the SDLP is content to support the amendment, given that given the views expressed by all our members here. Obviously, the police service here are a public body, and they do provide services to the community. As highlighted by Councillor Jackson, obviously road traffic policing, community policing and all aspects of life. Given the amendment was put on, we are content to support it, and obviously we would have questions too for the Police Federation representatives, who obviously are there to represent the views of their employees as well, or their members. But we would welcome any delegation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mooney. Councillor Doyle.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm not going to support the amendment primarily because whenever we've actually asked for actual serving police officers in this district in leadership positions to come before this council, they threw a strop twice and wouldn't come and speak to us about things that are particularly prevalent around policing in certain aspects of this district. So, coming and hearing from a representative of a trade union that represents officers is a very poor substitute, I think, for that. I don't think that this fits in with the motion, and I won't be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doyle. No further speakers on the amendment, so I think we need a vote on it. Chief Executive.
Thank you, Mayor. Alderman Breslins. Alderman Devaney.
For.
Alderman Hussey.
For.
Alderman McMorris.
Or.
I'm here, Alderman Kerrigan, and I'm for John. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jason Barr. Councillor Raymond Barr.
Against.
Councillor John Boyle.
For.
Councillor Michaela Boyle.
For John.
Councillor Carr.
Against John.
Councillor Cusick. Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Doyle.
Against.
Councillor Sandra Duffy.
For.
Councillor Farrell.
For.
Councillor Gallagher.
Against.
Councillor Harkin. Councillor Heaney.
For.
Councillor Jackson.
For.
Councillor Kelly.
For.
Councillor Logue.
For.
Councillor McGinley.
For.
Councillor McGowan.
For.
Councillor McHugh.
For.
Councillor McKinney.
Or
Councillor Mooney. Councillor Norris.
For.
Councillor O'Neill.
Against.
Councillor Riley. Councillor Tierney.
or
Are there any other members?
Councillor Barr, Jason Barr, and
Yep,
Chair
thanks,
Scott.
Mayor. For.
Thank you. Mayor, I have recorded 21 for the amendment, 6 against, so the amendment is carried.
Yep, thank you, John. So the amendment now becomes the substantive motion. I'll go back to Alderman McMorris. Are you content now to speak to the entire motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Sorry, thanks for that. In regards to the motion, we have not taken a final view on the bill being brought forward by the government. There have been promises by the government in order to amend the legislation, and we want to see what those amendments are. We do support the rights for workers to withhold their labour, and we want to see a balance struck between that and ensuring vulnerable people are not left without services. DUP representatives have challenged Grant Shapes on the floor of the House of Commons on this issue. Safe staffing levels in our health service are not just something that needs to be provided during industrial action, but should be there every single day. The best way to ensure that this is to ensure nurses are properly paid. So we want to see an overhaul in terms of conditions so that the Trust can directly employ nurses at a fair rate of pay rather than paying exorbitant fees to agencies. That would not only improve safe staffing levels, but also improve morale amongst vital health care workers. In regards to our position at the moment with the DUP is driven by the Northern Ireland Protocol. These parties that are cheerleaders for the protocol should explain that they're happy to see £18,000 spent every single hour of every day propping up the protocol instead of being used in our health service. The cost of trader support services for just one day could employ 10 experienced nurses for an entire year. That's a cost of 10 nurses that has been spent every single day for more than 2 years that has been spent by the government offsetting the worst impact of the protocol in our economy. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman McMorris. I have no further speakers.
Sorry, Mayor, can I state that we are going to be abstaining the motion?
Abstain. Okay, thank you. Councillor Harkin, do you wish to sum up?
Look, first of all, I think council officers made a poor decision by allowing that amendment to stay. An organisation that comes along and arrests workers for going on picket and going on strike is not an organisation that's part of the trade union movement. Let's just be clear about that. And look, the UUP introduced this amendment. The UUP, along with the DUP and along with Alliance, were the three parties that voted down an attempt to repeal Thatcher-era trade union legislation in the Assembly when it was up and running. And what they've done here is that they have clouded this motion that is about sending a message of support to striking workers. And that's the thread that runs through the original motion. It's a motion about defending trade unionism, about defending the right to strike and standing in solidarity with workers who are going on strike, be they civil servants, lecturers at McGee, health and social care workers, Royal Mail workers. And I think it's a disgrace that this was allowed to cloud the motion. And I'm very disappointed with Sinn Féin and the SDLP for going along with this attempt by parties that are clearly anti-trade union and who are fudging on the question of whether or not they back the trade union legislation. I hope that the message will still be clear that this council stands with striking workers and opposes any attempt to introduce anti-trade union legislation. And this is a present danger because there is no Stormont right now, and we have parties in here who are all for direct rule. And direct rule could mean that this type of legislation, if passed in Westminster, then gets introduced here, and that would be a disaster. And that's why it would be a betrayal of all working class communities right across our society.
Mayor, can I raise a point of order, please? Thank you. And I didn't want to interrupt Councillor Harkin when he was summing up, but Mayor, is it not the practice and the policy that council officers are there to advise you and you make the decision? Therefore, to say that council officers made a shocking decision is unfair. And Mayor, with respect, it should be any criticism of that decision should be aimed towards the chair of the meeting and not the officers. With respect, Mayor.
With respect, I took the decision that it was acceptable. And then I sought advice and the advice backed up my decision. So absolutely. I'm going to take this to a vote now. The DUP have indicated that they are abstaining. Anyone else indicating that they are voting against or abstaining?
Despite Councillor Harkin, I'm supporting the motion.
Should we take a vote? Yeah, just go through the vote.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Alderman Devaney,
Abstain, John.
Alderman Hussey,
For.
Alderman Carrigan,
Abstain, John.
Alderman McMorris,
Abstain, John.
Councillor Jason Barr,
For, John.
Councillor Raymond Barr,
For.
Councillor John Boyle, Councillor Michaela Boyle,
For, John.
Councillor Carr,
For, John.
Councillor Cusick. Left, sorry. Councillor Donnelly, I think may have left. Councillor Doyle,
For, John.
Councillor Doyle, could you say again, just please?
Sorry, John. For.
Councillor Sandra Duffy,
For.
Councillor Edwards is not here. Councillor Farrell,
For.
Councillor Gallagher,
Against.
Councillor Harkin, Councillor Heaney,
For.
Councillor Jackson,
For, John.
Councillor Kelly,
For.
Councillor Logue,
For, John.
Councillor McGinley,
For.
Councillor McGowan,
For, John.
Councillor McHugh,
For.
Councillor McKinney,
For, John.
Councillor Mooney, Councillor Norris,
For, John.
Councillor O'Neill, Councillor Riley, and Councillor Tierney. Thank you. Mayor, I've recorded 23 for, 1 against, and 3 abstentions, so the substantive motion passes.
Thank you, Chief Executive, and thank you to Councillor Harkin for bringing the important motion. And I think that anybody who watches what goes on in this council will see that as a body, we are very supportive of workers' rights, trade union movement, and any striking workers. So on that note, the next items are all open for information. Councillor Farrell.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And it's briefly on item 8, which is, resolutions from all our councils. And there's a letter on there from Newry, Mourne and Down asking councils across the north to support their calls for workers' rights to tips to be legally enshrined. So it's law in Britain, it's law in the Republic, and it's not law here. I think it'll be a progressive step and a long overdue step, especially given the cost of living crisis, rampant inflation, stagnant wages. I think people in the hospitality sector need to maximise as much income as they can. So I've got a question about this. Would we need a separate notice of motion, or could we support this through the paper?
Okay, legal advice says if you wish to propose that we support that, we could take it now.
Yeah, I'll propose it because
I'll be the second.
I think, there's workers out there that are in dire need of tips that are given to hospitality businesses right across the city and district. I don't know how prevalent it is that those tips aren't passed on to workers, but I think it would be a progressive step if there was a law in place that actually said there's a legal right for people to get those tips. So happy to propose that item.
I'm happy to second.
Okay, I have a whole lot of seconders for it, but I'll take Alderman Hussey, seeing as you were the first to say it out loud. Just on that,
May I-
absolutely, I agree. I tend to try to tip people in cash to the person rather than with the bill or whatever, because you never know.
May I
But
comment?
absolutely, look, I have a couple of speakers. I'm going to bring in Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me in, and I welcome this proposal coming forward here. And I've listened intensely to the debate, especially across Northern Ireland here and around tips. And I believe that within the hospitality sector, that those tips should go to the workers. I've listened to arguments from the owners of the business that they take the tips and it goes into a pool. But I do believe and support the proposal coming forward here, because I know any time that I go out to get anything, I believe a tip, it's for the person who delivers the food to you on the table. And look, happy enough to support the proposal, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Mayor, and I'll not say that we're happy to support the proposal. We would much rather see this being discussed on the floor of the Assembly. But in the absence of an Assembly and with the cost of living crisis facing, when everybody's facing, particularly those that are working within our hospitality sector, I think we owe it to those from this part of Ireland where they're not protected by legislation, or the tips aren't protected by legislation. This is the only avenue that's available to us. So on that basis, we'll support the proposal. Thank you, mate.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Mooney, were you indicating to second? Yeah, okay. Councillor Harkin.
Thanks, Mayor. We're happy to support the motion as well. This has been a long-standing campaign of Unite Hospitality, and I think that they will be delighted that we back this today. There is no chance of legislation being passed on this basis right now, but that passing the motion can send a message to employers that whether there's legislation in place or not, that workers should be able to access and the tips that they're given by customers. Obviously, workers across our hospitality sector deserve to be properly paid and have good terms and conditions. And more workers in our hospitality sector are joining up for trade unions. And one of the reasons is because of this campaign that Unite have been leading. So we're happy to support the motion, and thanks to Councillor Farrell for raising it.
Thank you. Councillor McKinney.
Thank you, Mayor, for letting me in again. Thank you, Roy, for bringing this. And for the support of all previous speakers, especially on what you said yourself, Madam Mayor, about tipping the person directly. Because I've been called out a couple of times where I've been paying by card and the tips all go into a big pool. So you don't know who's getting what out of it, or is the employer, I'll not say it, but you know what I'm thinking anyhow. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor McKinney. That sounded like unanimous support. So thank you for raising that, Councillor Farrell. One further on this. Oh, okay. Councillor Doyle on matters relevant. Oh, sorry. It's passed now.
Sorry, Mayor. I suppose I declare an interest as somebody whose business is in the hospitality sector and totally support the motion. I know, if I were to turn to my the folk who assist me within the business and say, sorry, the tips are, those are mine, I would have very short shift, and there is a difficulty in getting people in having people employed within the hospitality sector. And I believe that this particular issue, from my own experience, is probably on the bigger elements of hospitality, because certainly the majority of hospitality outlets that I would be aware of would be SMEs. And within that, they do tend, of necessity, to pay above the minimum wage for their staff, because good staff are hard to get. But at the same time, as has been pointed out, if a member of staff goes over and above what would normally be expected of them by a customer, they should have every right to that customer endorsing the additional service that they have received from that particular member of staff. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. So that is passed, so thank you. Councillor Doyle on a separate issue.
Thank you, Mayor, and it's in relation to the correspondence that we received from the Housing Executive and some housing associations with regards to the motion I had passed around the case of Awa Bishtak and damp and mould in residential properties. I have to say, in some of the responses, I'm very disappointed. It was almost like a robot had written them rather than an organisation who felt that they were doing absolutely everything that they could, because I commented on it and I remember distinctly Councillor Donnelly had also said the same thing that I had said at the time, which is I have seen cases of damp and mould in houses in areas right across this city that were significantly worse than what were documented in that tragic case. I know, Mayor, and I appreciate that you have arranged a meeting with some of the associations and the Housing Executive with regards to this topic. I'm disappointed again that not all of the organisations that offer housing in this city and district replied to us. And to be honest, I think that some of the letters that we got back are having a laugh, to be honest, because the service that I have received on behalf of many residents when damp and mold is prevalent in their homes and making their children sick from some organisations has been atrocious, and only for the dedication and expertise of our own environmental health team, many cases would never have been resolved. So I do think that we have to have a robust discussion with some of the housing associations in particular, who don't take the issue of mold and damp very serious, and also I suppose the peppering of cases that I've seen where specific officers who I would never name here come into a room for 10 seconds and say that's condensation, turn their heel and leave. That's totally unacceptable, especially, as I say, Mayor, whenever children in particular are becoming sick because of the circumstances in which they live. So just wanted to put that on the record, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Separate issue, Councillor O'Neill.
It was just on one of the responses to motions, Appendix 6 there, from the Northern Ireland Football Association, IFA. Yeah, so I think it's a welcome response in saying that they are committed to working for equality and diversity and inclusion in sport. I suppose it was just to point out, they said that they have collaborated with the Rainbow Project in organising that football tournament. Just to point out to them that this football tournament actually started in Derry and was supported by, I think, almost all the parties within this council chamber, like a lot of years ago. So, I think they're maybe trying to cloud their involvement in that in the way that it's good that they've supported it, but they haven't initiated it because it initiated here. And I still think these bodies need to be a lot more self-critical of themselves, because there is still a big problem of homophobia and particularly transphobia in sport, and rather than saying we're doing great because we're for this, they needed to be a lot more self-critical and look at it from that lens, rather than just patting themselves on the back for supporting a community's initiative. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. No further speakers. Gallagher saying he still has the scars. Okay, everyone, thank you very much for your attendance here, either in the chamber or online. And again, putting on record my thanks to the Deputy Mayor for stepping in yesterday. So thank you. And I think I'll see you next week for a rates meeting. See you then.